Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the film The Happy Prince. And this film is about the latter years of Oscar Wilde's life, and this is written, directed, and starring Rupert Everett. And this film is a passion project for him, and apparently he's been working on this for a long time. And obviously it makes sense, seeing as he's tagged himself to direct this film, he wrote this film, and tagged himself to star in it as well, and he plays Oscar Wilde. And this film starts off showing the very last days of Oscar Wilde, and then setting up what led him to this very deep, dark place in his life, based off of the years after he was imprisoned for lewd behavior. And basically the film kind of deals with the different relationships that he has in his life, whether it's his ex-wife or his ex-lover and other men that were significant figures in his life. And Rupert Everett, I feel like, does a decent job of trying to tell the story. He really tries to shake up how the story is told to make it more interesting than just from point A to point B. Does it always feel like it's super necessary? Probably not, but the thing is, at least it makes it feel a little more interesting and makes it stand out a little bit more than just let's go beat by beat throughout. And because the thing is, with the pacing of this film, there's some scenes that really stand out. They're a lot of fun or interesting or very powerful, but then there's also scenes that kind of stick out as dragging throughout, and it's just like, I'm not super interested in this particular scene. And this is one of those films where it's like, there's some really good scenes throughout, but everything put together doesn't really add up to something that's great. I think this is a really well made film in general, and I feel like there's some really emotional moments, there's some really funny moments, but then there's parts that are just kind of meandering and are just trying to get you from this point to this point and don't really pack as much of an impact where the audience can connect with them as some of the other scenes. And in terms of the depth of this film and what it's really trying to go for, you can tell that the title of this film is connected to some story that he's sporadically telling throughout with these children, either his children or this young boy that he meets on the streets, and trying to hit on these different kinds of themes of this man is dealing with being true to himself or what society expects of him, and really trying to balance this lifestyle he wants, but it's not really realistic in the point of his life where he is, and it causes very many issues, and whether you should keep people that are toxic in your life as a part of your life, and realizing who's really meaningful in your life compared to others. And in terms of how this was written, I think that the story in general is very intriguing. The opening parts of this film, I think, really draw you in and really helps capture who Oscar Wilde was as a person, his personality, how he interacts with people, what he values, and that beginning part really pulled me in. And throughout the film, there's parts where it's really reiterating these things and having very strong conflicts or strong emotional moments between characters. But in general, overall, Oscar Wilde is by far the most interesting person in this film, and you really don't get to see a whole lot of depth to a whole lot of other people in it. And there's other people popping up in his life that it's there's characters like Reggie and Robbie, who are his two friends, and it's basically all you gather from them are they're loyal friends, and that's basically it. And they're just there to be straight men, basically, for Oscar Wilde to bounce off of. Probably the most interesting other character in this film is Bosie, who is his lover that he wound up doing things with that got him in prison in the first place. And he's a very erratic person, and when they're on screen together, they have some very interesting chemistry, and it makes for some very interesting viewing experiences. But the idea is, really, this is Oscar Wilde's story, and I feel like you don't get to see how some of these relationships really connect, and it's kind of why are these friends there for him? He doesn't always seem like he's a very supportive friend back to them, or this relationship with his wife that never feels more of I want to be back with my wife, I want to see my wife again. you really never get the sense of like they had a good relationship to begin with, because you really don't see it, and you kind of just have to assume that they did. And in terms of his kids, it's like they're his kids, but there is one very nice moment that's hinted on at a couple of moments throughout of him telling the story of the Happy Prince, and really that's the only interaction you get to see with his children. So a lot of this stuff you feel like you're dropped in and you just have to kind of accept. And I don't know if that always works, but for the most part, a lot of his interactions with characters, they're interesting because he's interesting, and basically he brings energy to basically any film scene that's in the film. In terms of the music, Gabriel Yared, who composes this film, I think the music was well done. It's not something like I'm going to be remembering this for like weeks later and really wanting to listen to the music, but I feel like it was well done enough to elevate the scenes like it was supposed to be and really try to capture the emotions. And from a cinematography perspective, John Conroy, who's the cinematographer here, I think this was a really well shot film. There's some scenes that really use good framing to capture kind of where the characters are. There's some extreme close-ups, and there's some parts where it's like looking up. There's one particular scene that I remember in an alley where there's a lot of shadows and everything, and where the shadows lie on his face and where the camera is pointed. You can see it's like Oscar Wilde's this big, fabulous human character that's a lot of people admired before things happen, but then it's like how he's portrayed in that shot, it's like you could see it's like he has this dark shadow over him and he isn't looking very good. And overall, I think it was a really well shot film, and technically I think this was a well put together film, but obviously there's a lot more that has to go into filmmaking, and the production design and the costumes I think were really well done, really did capture the time period, and you really felt the experience of like you were in that time period, and that was really well done and worked well for the film. In terms of the cast, Rupert Everett really is a standout, and he gets to really chew a lot of scenery because he gets to play this eccentric character of Oscar Wilde, and he goes all in, and whether it's over the top or emotional, he really does make his presence known on screen, and I think he's one of the reasons why this film is so interesting. Now, there's some other actors like Colin Firth is in it, and Edwin Thomas, who are two friends, Reggie and Robbie. They're very subtle performances, and they don't have a whole lot to work with for the most part. Like, Edwin Thomas as Robbie has a couple of more moments, but Colin Firth is kind of just there, and they do a good job. They do what they're supposed to without a whole lot, and I feel like that's the same for Emily Watson, who plays his wife Constance. She pops up a couple of times, she does what she's supposed to do, but doesn't have a whole lot to work with. I feel like Colin Morgan's the only other actor who plays Alfred Bosey, his lover, that really gets a whole lot to work with in terms of personality and character, and he does really well with it. He goes in there and he really sells this over-the-top character as well, and when they're both on screen, they make things a lot more interesting. Overall, I think this is a well-done film. I think Rupert Everett was able to create something that you can tell that there's a lot of passion in it, and he really enjoyed making this film. If you're into period pieces and like biographies and stuff like that, I think this is a film for you. If you're not really into like that period piece kind of thing or very talky kinds of films, this isn't for you. Don't go check this out. This, I would assume, would be more for people who really enjoy film. But if you get a chance and check it out in a theater near you, I got to see it in AMC Classic. But thank you as always for checking in with your Wasteland reviewer, and let me know what you think.